Your second book, I think, is the one that kind of really brought you to the attention of the public, Fly Girl.
Right.
Your second novel, I think it was just a year out of college that you wrote that, a year or two out of school.
Right.
And it just really took off. Now, in that, it's kind of a coming-of-age story of a young lady, Tracy, in the hip-hop 80s era.
Right.
Why that particular subject? That's interesting for a young single male at that time to write about.
Well, I look at it as quite normal. I was a young single male that chased fly girls when I was a teenager.
Okay.
You know, so that was very obvious to me. It's like you writing your first poem. Generally, you're going to write about some guy you were in love with. If you were a guy, you're writing about some girl you were in love with. Your first song or whatever, it's going to be some love ballad, you know, about the opposite sex. And so it was very natural for me to write that book about, you know, the type of women that we would have loved to have, you know, when I was a teenager, and I couldn't get because I wasn't super fly myself. You know, so since I couldn't get one, I wrote a book about one. So that book was very natural, and I think it took off because women in this era tend to read 10, 20 times more than guys do. And so with me lucking up and writing that book about this young girl that a lot of young women related to, that became a hit seller for me. And that is actually the foundation of my career now, that Fly Girl book.
Well, it was an awesome book and an awesome introduction into the literary world. You also mentioned that you tackle a lot of issues, a lot of stereotypes, particularly I think about African-American males. Do you do that because you feel like the other writers are giving African-American males a bad rap?
When Terry McMillan came out with that Waiting to Excel book, I mean, she sparked a whole new genre.
Right.
My Black Man Done Me Wrong books. And it got to the point where I said, well, instead of us complaining so much, then somebody write a book that balances out the issue. Now, we all know, you all know, all the sisters, that you always had good guys that you ignored. All since high school, in college.
I didn't ignore them.
Right, all the time. So these good guys are constantly getting ignored, and they had them in the book. They were the guys that carried the groceries, they knew them in church, they're always crying on their shoulders. So I said, look, we got to write a book about a good guy, which that book became A Do-Right Man, which was actually, the first title was called Burnt Out. Because that's what good guys claim all the time. I'm burnt out because you don't give it any credit when you're a good guy. You know, it's like when you're a good person, they're waiting for you to do something wrong. But if you're a bad person, you can do wrong all day and nobody worries about it. Then you do something good and it's like, see, I knew he had something good in him. But if you're a good guy on a regular, boy, they just waiting for you to, and it's terrible, the pressure that's on good guys. So I wrote that book, A Do-Right Man, to balance out the value system that we have in America that's, you know, flipped upside down, where the good guys have all this pressure and the bad guys can do all they want and then get celebrated when they do the slightest good thing.
Right. I think it's the same thing we see with youth, too. The ones that act up get so much attention, and the ones that are good, straight-A students.
And it's really sad, and it eats up a lot of good guys in this country, and it really makes those guys bitter a lot of times.
It's discouraging.
You know?
Well, they've got a champion in you, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to do my thing.
Trying to
you know,
turn
I got to
things
keep
around.
standing out, you know, to make sure that I am a standout. And that's why, you know, I'm so adamant about bringing books out every year and doing it my way. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm one of the youngest and one of the baddest, and I want to stay here.
Well, you started out self-published. Obviously, you've been picked up by Simon & Schuster, a major publication company. Are you still able to do it your way?
Well, yeah, each new contract, you know, you get a little more control. You know, now I'm up for a next big deal in this book that I just put out, the sequel to Fly Girl, For the Love of Money. I went ahead and did that because I had a young audience with Fly Girl of 20s and under.
Right.
And they knew my name first. Now, the other audience, basically, everybody's kind of capturing a piece of Terry McMillan's audience. That's all we're doing. They're all waiting for Terry to come back out, and all we're doing is getting fragments of her initial numbers. I saw that Fly Girl had a new audience, that they were looking at my name first. So I said, well, let me come back to this young audience with a sequel to Fly Girl, because they loved that book so much they weren't moving on to my other books. So I said, if I come back to this book, I can establish that audience that knows my name first, and then I can do whatever I want to do with that audience and raise them up. Because this under 20 crowd, a lot of them are fresh new readers, and I'm the first book that they actually read with the Fly Girl thing. That is tremendous power when you're talking about a loyal fan base that's going to grow with you. And so, you know, I'm returning to that fan base, and now we're up for a new contract next year, and so I'm going to sit pretty and say, look here, we want to go after new numbers, we got our own fan base, and I want to make sure that we get their attention with some high numbers. Yeah, so I'm in a beautiful position right now.
When you know your market and your demographics, it makes it a lot easier to sell books.
And you got to be bold and tell people that you know what's going on and that you have to go after it. You know, it's like the lion seeing the deer in the grass, we got to jump on it. You got to get your food.
And jump quick
and
before they skitter away.
You can't be nervous about it.
I understand.
Let's go get it.
We're talking a lot about young people, younger generation, 30 and under, let's say, and we often hear that generation referred to as Generation X, slackers, no sense of purpose.
Right.
Do you think that's a fair assessment? Obviously
Well,
not with you.
I always have to re-educate people on this whole Generation X deal. That actually is applied to suburban white kids. My generation was called the hip-hop generation. We started this new form of music, this new form of attitude in the 1980s, which Fly Girl talks about. And what happened when it crossed over to white suburban kids, their parents didn't know what was going on, so their parents called them the unknown Generation X. And then what America does is just blanket the whole community. Black people, generally, we don't have our own say. So next thing you know, we're getting called the Generation X too when we already had our own name. We're the hip-hop generation. So we need to break apart those different terms, because this Generation X is definitely coming from white America to their suburban kids, where we already had our name and we knew exactly what we were doing. And if you look at the American culture, everything is following urban black people.
Okay.
All over the
in
country.
regards to that, leaving out Generation X, even the hip-hop generation, do you think that you have, the hip-hop generation has or had the respect from the older generations that they should have, that they deserve? Not
at all. I mean, we always look at starting the car over. That's what I say in the black community. And it's like, you know, you get that old car and we're used to doing things this way.
Tradition.
And then these new cars come in and they say, look, Dad, we got to do different things, do different things, try different ways of doing things. And the old car say, oh, no, we've been driving this car. And so then the new guys have to go ahead and build their own cars. And then you look at it and say, oh, you're being disrespectful, you're not doing this. If you actually look at my generation, we are more entrepreneurial than black America has ever had. But then on the flip side, we have a whole lot of individuals who didn't get that opportunity to be entrepreneurs, and so they started selling drugs and going backwards. But if you look at the singular efforts and independence that my generation has made, we have been the most independent generation and most power-driven generation that African America has ever produced. You know, so I'm not looking at us as slackers at all. So again, you have to define that hip-hop versus Generation X stuff. And understand that the hip-hop generation, we did a heck of a lot of things, and we made America pay attention to us, and now they're following everything we do.
Okay. What did the hip-hop generation do, in addition to, say, clothing and music?
There were no marketing strategies toward urban communities. Now everything is marketed toward, and if you're not hip in the urban community, then you're not selling anything in America. And that's across the board. And you can look at Tiger Woods right now. You know, this whole, you know, jumping it up and the whole Nike thing and the whole youth thing, everything. And they say, oh, he's getting all the numbers up in golf. It's an urban phenomenon. Even if Tiger Woods does not connect himself to the urban culture, they're still going to look at that as an urban phenomenon. All this marketing and whatnot depicted straight from the energy that we brought across with hip-hop. Rock music is dead and gone now. Now, white kids that want to bring out new music, they call it hip rock or rock hip, because they're trying to get that urban feel that we have. NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, Christina Aguilera, you name them, they're taken from the urban culture. So we're not slackers at all. America's doing the same thing they've always done. Watch black creativity and say, let's go in there and grab some of it and figure out how we can cultivate it for ourselves. So no at all, if we've been slackers, no way in the world. And I'm a part of that culture, and I'm doing the, you know, the writing thing. And I have full intentions to becoming, you know, the Black Stephen King. But of course, my name